Okay. Just getting this set up. All righty. Here we are again. Welcome back to the Art of Awakening podcast. My name is Golden Drake, and here we are. We have arrived. So my topic today is mother to crone initiations. And it's very much alive in me at this moment. If you are subscribed to my mailing list on my website, then this morning you received a letter from me, and it shares current musing, this season of life that I'm in, the transition from mother to crone within the woman's arc of life, maiden, mother, crone. Well, I have arrived and I've been here in the crone aspect or face or phase of my human life here as a woman. And that's what we're going to be speaking about today. So this, if you're watching this, you're watching the video version on YouTube. Hello. I'm a little frustrated that the streaming quality isn't at the level I'd like it to be, but the picture is clear enough for people who prefer podcasts in video format. And then if you prefer audio format, I'm going to have this on my Spotify podcast, or my podcast that lives on Spotify, which is the Art of Awakening podcast. And I'll be sharing this on my Patreon as well. Big, massive shout out, love to my patrons on Patreon. Those of you that are there making an investment and a donation every month really makes a significant impact in my life and helps me to get my basic needs met, and helps me really craft the art of awakening and offer my gifts and my passion and my calling and my purpose to the world as a life midwife. This is a path that has emerged since my cancer portal, my cancer initiation, is my work as a life midwife and supporting people in all their seasons and big transitions, big rites of passage in life. And it feels correct for me to be doing this. And it's, as anyone who is an entrepreneur or birthing their own business knows, it's no easy feat. Well, it has to create and birth through this business and this work and monetizing my work and building it up so that it could be something that could sustain me and bring in prosperity so that I can get my needs met, do my work as a life midwife, fulfill my personal needs while meeting the needs of the collective and the earth simultaneously. This is truly my intention. So a big hug to my patrons. Thank you. And for all of you that catch the free content as well, thank you. Thank you for your presence here. And I invite you, if this lands and resonates with you, or if you feel called to share it, please share it. So I have my cup of tea with me. I invite you to get your beverage of choice, get cozy, and dive in with me on this very special topic, the mother to crone initiations. That being said, I'm going to enjoy a sip of tea and enjoy a breath wave. Perhaps you'll join me on it, and then we'll dive in. So let's enjoy a breath wave together. So receive an inhale of life force energy into your body temple. Surrender that breath. Let's take 2 more. Big inhale. Open your jaw, let it go. See how your body responds to the breath. Big inhale, receive it fully. Open your jaw. That's better. Okay, so diving in. Mother to Crone initiations. As I said, I wrote about it this morning. I sent it out in my newsletter. If you'd like to subscribe, go to my website, golden.org, to get on my mailing list. I also posted this one in my blog section on my website. So if you want to catch it and read it, feel free. I love writing. It's one of my art forms. It's one of my forms of beloved self-expression and creative sharing, creative communication. So yes, I wrote the newsletter and I was sharing about how I haven't written a newsletter in months now, and shared pretty candidly that I've been in the past couple months, I've been in a state of more contraction and quieting down, tuning in, listening in for my inner wisdom. I've been posing a lot of questions to my deepest, wisest, highest self, my spirit, that which animates this body temple, that eternal consciousness, the infinite consciousness, that which is one with God or creator or great spirit, whatever you choose to call the unnameable, which animates us all, right? Which gives life to all, which weaves and binds all of us as one here in this realm of separation and the delusion of, or the illusion of separation. So when I have been in this process of quieting down, turning inward, getting clear, it's been a response to the navigation of my current life circumstances. And currently in my own life, I am in this period of time, this season where I feel quite groundless. It's an in-between time in my own life, in the arc of my life as a woman. And the more that I've chosen to kind of quiet down and go more inward with myself, in sincerity, in a true humble seeking for clarity about how to navigate this sense of groundlessness, and also a period of a lot of grief, a lot of discomfort with navigating my inner realm and my external realm. And, just to sort of contextualize it, those of us that are big feelers, or anyone who's just sort of like any iota of awake on the planet, is probably feeling big things right now in our lives. And we are feeling into the collective. We are feeling into what's happening on the planet. And so I make sure to contextualize my own personal experience within the context of the collective. And I often see that there are kind of micro to macro themes or ripplings of energies that I'm experiencing in my personal life, and it's simultaneously happening in the collective. And for me, when I really entered into the twilight zone, which feels very planetary right now, it feels that we're in a planetary twilight zone, that started big time for me, like in a kind of quantum way, shift from what my everyday challenges were, as a single mom, as someone working full time and mothering full time, and just going through a really intense court case and just a lot. Well, cancer was this kind of catapulted me into the twilight zone. And it felt very kind of isolating. It was hard because I didn't feel I could relate to people as much in like the everyday challenges. I was in these life and death circumstances. And I think a lot of people had a harder time also relating to me for a variety of reasons. And it was really grappling with trying to find words to articulate my experience. And I, turned to art to move this energy through and find ways to express and articulate that transcended language. And I would also try to write, and journal and write and put posts on social media and such to bring languaging and to try to find a way to communicate and express this very surreal initiation that I was going through. And here I am again. It's been about 4 years since I went through that year of treatment, and it's kind of been no man's land ever since in many ways. And however, more and more I'm finding that I'm able to articulate. See, my connection is unstable. Why? I'm right next to like the modem and the router and all that. Oh, I hope that the connection is coming through clear enough on your side. So yes, I'm here in this period of time in my life where I'm seeing what I'm going through personally is echoed in the collective. There is a groundlessness in the collective. There is a seeming falling away of what we once saw as normal or stable or secure. We're seeing systems collapse. We're seeing reality collapse in many ways. We're seeing very unsettling things happen that seem to be outside of our control in many senses. And that is very unsettling, right? It's very destabilizing. And I'm finding that here in my transition from mother to crone, these themes are very much alive in my personal. And so I've been really feeling in to find ways to articulate my personal experience. And what I keep finding myself saying is that it feels like I'm in a death/rebirth portal. And I've been seeking to find ways to better understand that, to tease it apart, to feel into the nuance, to be able to articulate it for myself and communicate it with those around me. And also, as a life midwife, be able to hold the space for others that are going through this and help for us in our processes to hang languaging, the garments of languaging around these experiences that we often find difficult to articulate. And so feeling into the mother to crone initiation, so much of it feels languageless to me, I think, because what I'm recognizing is this shift in a woman's arc of life is often shrouded in our society, in a cloak of invisibility. So I haven't heard in my, I guess, arc of my own life as a girl to woman, I haven't heard much around what it's like for women, other than, catching conversations of maybe my mom or my elders, or those elders in my community who do speak upon it. But much of it is very unfamiliar territory for me. And I think I've arrived here very prematurely in a way. I mean, there's a divine timing in everything, but I never would have imagined that I would go into menopause at age 42, chemically induced due to chemotherapy. From 1 month to the next, I was a menstruating woman, suddenly finding myself no longer having a menstrual cycle, and thrust from one cycle to the next into total menopause. I never gave it much thought, but I always sort of just figured as a woman, I would naturally, as many women do, arc into menopause over years. And many women, I felt perimenopausal for a few years prior to cancer treatments. I remember feeling it and talking about it and having certain sister friends being like, what? No, you're way too young for that. But I was like, no, really, I feel my body, my menstrual cycle making shifts. I feel it, which is not uncommon. I mean, perimenopause can happen several years before we start really arcing into menopause. I mean, it is the ascent of the arc into menopause, right? So I just sort of assumed, I guess, naively, that I would, over several years, make my journey into menopausal season of my life, into Cronedom, and land there probably in my 50s, right? So to land there at age 42 and, to not know going into chemo that I was going to potentially go into menopause, there was no forewarning. I remember going to my oncologist for my first exam after my first round of chemos, and saying, where's my period? And he was like, well, this is one of the side effects. I hate that word, side effects. It's effects. Let's just call it what it is. One of the many effects is the potential for a woman to go into menopause, chemically induced. And I was already in such a state of grief and shock that I don't think I was able to properly come to terms with that and make sense of it and grieve it. And I had worked very hard as a maiden and a mother to shift my relationship with my menstrual cycle and my woman body, my female body. I was born into a culture with a lot of unhealthy treatments and viewpoints of a woman, a menstruating woman, and just a woman in general, right? And so I worked very, very hard from an inner directive to reclaim my womanhood and to reclaim my moon cycle as a sacred, empowered rhythm and cycle in my life, to work with that ebb and flow and that powerful energy moving through me, connected to the moon, connected to the waters, connected to the earth, connected to my lineage, connected to all women through all time, right? To come in and see the power of the potency of the cycle of our moon time, of our moon blood. And I got into really shifting my mindset and redoing a lot of that programming around the unhealthy programming, undoing that, and creating a new storyline for myself as a woman and as a mother, and reclaiming that shift from maiden to mother, and reclaiming that shift from child to maiden, right? And ritualizing it and having ceremony even after the fact, So many of us that don't have a first moon menarche ritual in our lives, we can do that for ourselves after the fact. Or if we don't feel that we properly honored the shift from maiden to mother, that's a massive rite of passage in our lives. Whether or not we biologically birth a baby, maybe we're birthing projects, maybe we're birthing art forms. No matter what it is, when we shift from maiden to mother season of our lives, if it's not properly marked with rite of passage and ceremony, we can feel that. We humans can feel this. Men feel it too. Men feel the void of not marking boyhood to young manhood or adolescence, right? Their first rite of passage into manhood. And then they arc into their full manhood, and then they arc into their eldership, right? And we women do the same. We're arcing from childhood into our first moon, our menarche. We arc into the mother phase. We arc into Cronedom. And then all of us from our eldership season, if we're blessed enough to make it that far, not all of us make it through all these seasons in our human body. But that final arc, the final season, is Cronedom for us women, right? And then the next stop is death, or the leaving of the physical form, surrendering our body temples back to Mother Earth to be composted and for new life to spring forth and wear, just like we are wearing the composted bodies and elements of those that came before us, right? We are wearing earth, water, fire, air, conjured together by our souls, our spirits. These bodies that are on loan, right? And for, I'm guessing, hundreds of thousands of years or millions, based on what your understanding of humanity's timeline is here, we had rites of passage. We honored these big periods of time in our lives, right? Birth, and then the shift into young adulthood, the full expression of adulthood, the eldership, and death, and rebirth, right? And when we don't have these proper celebrations or markings or rituals or initiations, we feel off. It's something we humans have done, stretching way back in time through our lineage. And our current society doesn't necessarily offer that. Now, we do celebrate birth. We have baby showers, right? We celebrate marriage. So we do have some rites of passage. We can celebrate when someone is retiring from their job. What else do we celebrate? We celebrate when somebody graduates from high school or college, or maybe buys a new home. And these are all kind of joy-based celebrations, we as a society, I find, tend to shy away from the grieving aspect of all of these, right? We have funerals, so we do celebrate the life of people when they pass, and we do make space for grief there. Now, I remember when I was making the shift from maiden to mother, I had a lot of grief come up. That wasn't part of the baby shower. Baby shower, it's amazing. It's amazing to be in that celebration of this mystery, of this magic, of this potency of a woman in this full mother expression, stretched beyond belief, bearing new life, creating life in her womb, about to birth her baby through, to bring through an ancestor return, and a contribution to the community and to earth and to the family. But I remember a grief component. And I remember my dear friend Mila, who served as my sort of spiritual doula through the birth of both of my children, helped me process and identify the grief aspect of I was no longer a maiden. I was shifting into motherhood, and I was grieving the dying away of being in my fullness as a maiden, right? The freedom and everything that comes when we're in our maiden, right? When we go into the mother phase, shit gets way more real. And if a biological baby is coming into our stewardship, into our care, if we're charged with that responsibility, all of a sudden we are initiated into being in selfless service to another soul that's completely dependent upon us. And forevermore, it doesn't stop when they're 18. It goes on forevermore. The nature of the stewardship changes, which I'm finding now that my baby is 18. But it doesn't end at 18, and I wouldn't want it to, But so that leads me here to where I'm at with the shift from mother to crone in my own life. And what I'm really feeling into is this massive death of identity as a mother. For the past 21 years, my full identity has been rooted in being a mother, being a steward of life on earth, having two incredible human beings in my care. And a big part of my motherhood journey has been as a single mother. Now, I have had the blessing to have had their father in the beginning of that as a family unit, and then have him, be not, well, we weren't married any longer, but he was still in their lives in certain ways. And then I had the blessing of having a partner there for a period of that time. But a lot of it, it was a lot of hard years of single motherhood. And I did have the blessing of having sister friends and some family members and people within my community that, although we didn't live in a village setting where we're in physical proximity, weaving together a tapestry of getting everybody's needs met, at least, several of my sister friends were in the same town, and we really leaned on each other, especially those of us that had kids and, really needed each other's support with our kids. So I'm not saying I did it all alone, but there is something to be said when there is one parent in the home, when the kids are in your full care. It's quite a challenge. And something clicked in me when I became a mother, when I gave birth to my first child. It was like the light switch went on, full activation, mother bear, mother gorilla, mother lion. I will do anything for the surviving and thriving of this child. And then when my second child came, it was for the both of them, and I was just like, they're absolutely my top priority. And, when you're also in the single motherhood paradigm, their needs come before ours. And I've heard Kimberly Ann Johnson say, for single moms, there's that whole expression of like, put somebody else's, like when the plane's going down, you put somebody else's oxygen mask on, and then you put yours on, and then you put it on your child, right? And I love how she says, that's not how it goes for single parents. You're putting on their oxygen mask first, then you're putting yours on. And I really related to that. I really, out of necessity, needed to put a lot of my needs to the back burner and put their needs first. And as a parent, I needed to meet their basic needs, and I needed to do whatever I needed to do in order to get those needs met. I really stretched way beyond my comfort zone at times to do what I needed to do to make sure that my kids' basic needs were met and that they were safe, they were stable, they had a roof over their heads, their bellies were full, they had clothes on their bodies, and they felt unconditionally loved to the best of my ability. And as an artist, as a creative, as a Piscean dreamer, as a dancer, I had all of these dreams that I needed to figure out how to navigate that part of me while being a practical mama bear that needed to make sure our needs were met and made a lot of sacrifices to do the practical job to get the steady pay, because there was no way in hell I was gonna not get our basic needs met, So a lot of self-care, a lot of the things maybe a single person with no children would do for themselves, I was prioritizing my kids above that. It's just what felt correct for me, not in a martyr way, but just that's what the situation called for. And so much of my entire identity began to form around being a mother. And it was not only my responsibility, but it was my joy. It was my honor. It was a blessing. It still is. They're grown now. So like I said, the nature of the relationship has shifted. But I'd still do anything from a place of mother love to ensure that my kids feel and know they're unconditionally loved and supported by me, and do whatever I could to support them in their survival and in their thriving. I really want them to succeed and thrive in life, and I really want them to know who they are and why they're here and live it. And I understand that's a part of the legacy that I'm leaving here on planet Earth. My children are a part of my legacy. And I understand that raising children isn't a paid job on the planet. I've been a full-time working mom and a full-time worker and a full-time mom simultaneously. And it's like, that is like pulling a rabbit out of a hat. It's an insane amount of responsibility, and being a mother is an unpaid position, and it's the most important job on the planet, quite literally, is being a mother and being a father, right? Being a parent, being a steward of a human's life. and doing everything in our power to make sure that we support them on their life journey to come into their fullest expression, to fulfill their soul's mission here on earth. So this year, my baby turned 18. And this year, she graduated from high school. And I spent the whole year prior to this year preparing myself inside. Now, even though school for her was happening via Zoom because of everything that's happening in the world, we were having all of our last year ofs, right? It was like the last first day of school, the last Thanksgiving or Christmas or New Year's of the school time, right? And then just all her final bits of her senior year. Graduation was a big one. And it's this shift in her life, in our life, along with my cancer initiation, has brought me into a process. Is this still recording? Yeah. Has brought me into a process of life review that I think happens kind of, there's an activation that happens when someone is near death, where we go into life review. This happened for me during cancer treatments. I began to go deep into a life review. I began to, and it wasn't a conscious thing, I need to review my life now. It was like, I might die soon. And there was like this cellular activation, inner directive. Maybe it was my spirit, maybe it was me, my future self on the last day of her life saying, do the review now. You know, we don't know how much longer we're going to be in this body. And I began to really review who I was, who I've been. And I really began reflecting on how I've shown up in relationship to myself, relationship to my children, relationship to my loved ones, whether it's been partners, family, my parents, my sisters, my brother and sisters, my friends, my community, my students, my teachers, my elders, my mentors, my coaches, all of my relations, and the earth, right? And my spirit guides, my ancestors, God, all of my relationships. I went into a life review. I went into a life review about the choices that I've made in life and the effects of them. The very real implications of the pivotal moments and choices that I made. In my life review, I celebrated and I grieved. And I noticed the grief would come like tsunami sometimes, tsunami waves. And again, it was like this primal activation of my body temple processing the grief. I would find when I'd make my own little grief rituals in front of my altar at home, my body would shake and I'd be crying and just emoting and expressing and allowing the energy to come up through and out, to have a cycle and a process. And it would happen in waves. And I feel into the bittersweet finite nature of life on earth, right? When we're young, it kind of feels like life will go on forever. And when our babies are tiny, we feel like life, this childhood thing is going to go on forever. Oh my gosh. And I remember when my babies were small and my elders would say, savor every moment. It goes by in a flash. And I remember being like, huh? It feels like it's going to go on. I couldn't fathom that. And now here with my baby at 18, I'm like, oh my gosh, they were so right. It goes by in a flash. My babies are at adult age, and entering a new season of their lives. And so let me take a breath because I'm all wound up. I'm going to take a sip of tea too. So here in this transitional space, I am in my cronedom. I think prematurely, had I not done chemo, but again, there's a divine timing to everything. So I'm here experiencing cronedom now at age 46, and it's right on time for a bigger picture that I, in my human eyes, can't quite see right now. But here I am. And experiencing the very real effects of menopause. I mean, there are very real effects. There's emotional surges, ebbs and flows and waves that you might think as a younger woman are more relegated to your menstruating cycles. We all know as menstruating women, although there are waves we ride, there's energetic waves, there's emotional waves. It's just, you understand when you go through that process, there are highs and lows that we're going through as we're releasing this egg, this potentiality for new life to be created in our bodies. And when we're born with all the eggs we'll ever have. And there is a grief cycle that happens every time we release an egg and it hasn't been fertilized, right? Whether or not we want a baby in our rational, conscious mind, the body is experiencing that giving and that releasing and all the effort that the womb makes and takes to prepare for new life, to become a hospitable space to grow new life. And then when nothing, if it's not fertilized, there's a release, right? There is a sacred flow of blood that doesn't come from a wounding. It's the only time when in a human's body there's a release of blood without a wounding, right? And it's just a very magical, potent time. And we have that creative life force. And if we're not really working with it in right relationship, it can kind of wreak havoc and we can kind of feel like we're at odds with it. It's hard, it's confusing, there's friction, we're kind of at the mercy of all of those hormones and energy flows. Well, here in menopause, I'm here to say it's happening here and we're not releasing blood. It still happens over here. The emotional surges. Sometimes I joke and say to myself, am I crazy or am I a crone? It's like women are considered lunatics and crazy because they have these emotions. Well, I mean, we have emotions. We have a wide spectrum of emotionality and hormones moving through us. And so to people who don't understand that, they might call that lunacy, right? Connected to the moon, lunar, lunatic, crazy. irrational. Well, when there's not a container in society for us to actually honor what's going on in our cycles and flows, it might come across as crazy and irrational. If there's no space for the crone, if there's no space for the banshee, if there's no space for the menstruating woman, it's going to come out in funky ways, and then everybody's going to call us crazy, right? Well, in menopause, we might not be bleeding, but we're still having the emotional surges, and that's paired with body pains, that's paired with exhaustion, it's paired with sleep disturbances, it's paired with hot flashes, it's paired with the way our body, our digestion, our sexual expression, our tissues, and everything changes. And like I was saying earlier, it's so shrouded in secrecy and invisibility in our society because our society is built upon a Forever 21 aesthetic for women. We are entrained to appear youthful at any cost, at all times. It's more and more, it's less and less common to see a woman aging naturally nowadays. Whether that's she's covering the grays of her hair, and no shame and judgment to those who do. I'm just naming it. I understand why people do these things. It's a reflection of the world we live in, where we reject the crone. She's irrelevant, she's ugly because she's aging, because wrinkles, we're programmed to think wrinkles and silver hair and sagging bodies are ugly. So of course women are like, I'm going to dye my hair, I'm going to get Botox, I'm going to do surgery, I'm going to get, a fat transfer, I'm going to get, and again, no shame, no judgment for those who make those choices. I get it. We all are trying to make choices to the best of our ability at every moment. But I am realizing it's less and less common to see now women in the world aging naturally, letting their silver hairs show and allowing wrinkles to just be. And it's very confronting, the aging process, for everybody, because of the nature of the beauty machine that I like to call it, that's just beats it over our head that we must look young and beautiful because our beauty and our worth have been inextricably woven together in this society. Our value is so bound up in our looks in this world. Gosh, my nose just itches. Sorry. So I've talked a lot about this in other videos and podcasts, episodes, and actually the last two podcasts I was a guest on, Tales of Recovery with Priest Alves and Goddess Vibrations with Natasha Edwina, I talked about menopause and Crondom. So I'll try to link those below this video. So if you want to access it, you can go listen there. Talking about the aging process and menopause and Crondom. And so it's no easy feat to be an aging woman in this world, So yeah, where was I going with that? Anyways, it's just part of what I've been navigating in my own Crone initiations is the aging process and allowing my body to just be in its process and not try to force it to appear 21. And I think for me, what I think is the empowered aspect of the crone starts to look through the lens of unconditional beauty upon herself and others. So the more I have this activation, which I received during Cancer, was to start to see through the lens of unconditional beauty, which I say, the societal beauty industrial complex sees through conditional beauty. And it's like very rigid, tiny parameters that are pretty much unachievable. And you can go to great lengths to try to get it, but it's always like the carrot dangling in front of your face. You're never, ever going to be quite good enough by conventional beauty standards, unless you're like, a supermodel or whatever. Or you've done like massive procedures to your body. So yeah, coming to see ourselves, the beauty of just simply being alive, and the mystery and the perfection of the imperfection of the perfection. Like I like to say, perfectly, imperfectly perfect we are. We're perfectly, imperfectly perfect. And, allowing myself to have this menopausal and aging experience. And to see the beauty in myself. Maybe it's not conventionally beautiful by societal standards, what somebody would say is like supermodel beauty or whatever the, unachievable, like top beauty thing is. To just say, this is who I am. This is the body that my spirit conjured this lifetime. And it's beautiful just because I am alive. And this is something I really got during Cancer. It's like, I'm alive. I have a body temple. My body temple is designed so intelligently and is designed to self-heal no matter what. It's like I was pouring chemicals into my body in order to heal, chemo and surgery, radical surgeries and radiation and pharmaceuticals. And my body was like, I'm still gonna do my best to self-heal. And it was just like astonishing. And it kind of blasted off this programming of, my whole life. It's just like the programming just never felt quite good enough in terms of looks, and it's like, all of a sudden I was like, oh, wow, body, you've been my devoted companion my whole life. You've endured all of these programmed thoughts that I've been thinking and saying to you, of me telling you you're not enough, and just that whole skewed sense of reality, and that my body just stayed here with me. My body has been my devoted companion, just as yours has been for you, no matter what we've done or said to it. It's like, still here. I'm still here. And it just made me be like, oh my gosh, you're a mind-blowing miracle and you are beautiful. No matter what society says, and this was the activation I had: breastless, bloated, bald, on the brink of death, cancer-ridden. I could see my true beauty. And this was a massive initiation into Cronedom, because I have a sense that the empowered crone sees through the eyes of true beauty. She sees her true beauty. She embodies her true beauty, and she knows, body or no body, she is beautiful just because she exists. It's the true beauty, not the conditional beauty, not the program constructs. True beauty is the presence of life. So whether or not I have a body, whether or not you have a body, we are unconditionally beautiful. Why? Because we exist. We are on purpose. We are on sacred purpose. That is a beautiful thing. So I've been shifting into that space of that inner standing and grieving the reality of being here at what we would call middle age. I don't know how many years I have left, but I guess generally speaking, I'm here at middle age and I'm in my Crone and doing my life review and coming into my awakening more and more every moment and having my life review, right? As my baby graduates high school, I'm looking back at my kid's childhood. I'm looking back at who I was as a young woman who was giving birth, marrying the father of my children, envisioning our lives. Like I had this dream and vision of what I wanted our family to be. I wanted us to be a family forevermore. I wanted our home to be the place, the hub where all of their friends came and make big meals together and play music and dance and celebrate and have parties and just be that. That was my total dream when I created a family with their father, and it didn't go that way at all. And so I've had this life review with my babies now at adulthood of their childhood. I've been really grieving that it didn't go the way I wanted at all. And kind of on the contrary, it was filled with a lot of tumultuousness, a lot of challenge, a lot of heartache, a lot of hardship, a lot of poverty, a lot of bare minimum, a lot of love, but challenging, very, very challenging, painful, a lot of pain. And I've been grieving that, I've been grieving that I didn't get to give them the family experience that I intended as a mother when I brought them into this world. I'm grieving that that relationship didn't make it. I'm grieving that I had another relationship while I was raising them that didn't make it, that I brought my kids through that. And obviously there's a perfection in everything, and we all needed to go through it on some level, but grieving what feels like the failures that happened within my charge while simultaneously celebrating. They made it to adulthood and I made it, which my nose itches. Why? I made it to see them to adulthood. And when I was going through cancer treatments, a big thing for me was a big intention and vision and goal for living was I at least need to see my kids to adulthood. That is my responsibility as a mother, and I'm going to do it no matter what. Like, I'm doing it. I was like, God, at least let me see them to adulthood. And at the time, my baby was, she 13 or 14 when I was diagnosed. I think she was 14. She had just turned 14. We had our whole high school years ahead, And at that time, my son did early graduation, so a year in advance. But I was like, there's no way in hell I'm leaving Earth before my children are at adult age, God. So whatever we need to do, let's go. And so I'm in a massive celebration that I at least made it this far, and I intend to stay here much longer, to be here as my kids grow into adulthood and perhaps even have babies of their own. And I get to maybe have the blessing of being a grandmother if that's in the cards. I've been grieving. I didn't bring forth the work that I've wanted to do thus far at the capacity that I have intended. I've been grieving that I have been in poverty through my whole adulthood and the struggles of that. And then I haven't figured out how, while navigating single motherhood, how to also be financially successful and create financial economic stability for myself, for my children, grandchildren, legacy, community. That's a big intention of mine, is heal the scarcity, the lack, poverty consciousness within me, step into the true prosperity, abundance, bring forth my gifts, embody them, and come into prosperity, which includes financial prosperity, the more than enoughness, not so I can afford it, but so I can steward money responsibly, have more than enough, because when we have money, we have options and we can exhale a little more. I say that coming from being a person who's experienced poverty for decades. Life's different when you have stepped out of financial eking by into there's more than enough. Your whole life pivots. I'm ready to go there, and I haven't gone there thus far, and I've been in grief around that. I've been grieving, like, why haven't I figured it out yet? What in hell? And I've been working really hard on healing that paradigm and coming back into our true nature of abundance consciousness, and that includes prosperity financially. So I have work to do. And have just been grieving. Like, if I were to die today, I wouldn't have the kind of tangible legacy that I want to leave my kids for inheritance. I want to, when I go, and even beforehand, I want to be able to bless them with support, financial support. And when I go, I want them to have a physical inheritance from me. And so I've been, in this grief space of like, I've made this massive accomplishment of raising kids. Sorry, I'm scratching my nose through this whole thing. If you're watching the video, you're like, girl, get it together. I'm grieving that I'm, single in middle age, and really grieving that I haven't yet had that sacred union that my heart knows is possible. I haven't yet come into that sacred relating, that divine union with my true partner. And it's frustrating, Again, it's like my life, I'm grieving the ways my life didn't go the way I had intended. So allowing the grief to just breathe and move through me. And grieving that as I've come into myself in the arc of my life, I've really gotten to know myself. I've really gotten to know what my true values are. What's meaningful to me? What's important? What are my values? What are my virtues? I know them. I have been grieving that I'm not living in accordance with a lot of my values and the way that I want to relate to the earth and to my work, to money. And so there's been a lot of frustration and confusion of like, God, what am I not getting? What am I not seeing? What's in my blind spots? What's still in my shadow? What's in there that needs to still be resolved? Let's go. I mean, I've been on let's go mode. I've been on life is precious. Nothing is promised. Now I am 46. Again, it's it's been go time, but like more than ever. And shit's getting real, not to mention what's going on in the collective, what's going on the planet, and watching as we are watching very scary things happening on the planet right now. Very destabilizing, very uncentering, very disconcerting. That I feel that within my own process of being like, oh my gosh, I'm a single woman and I, don't have a bunch of financial resources to make choices around what I want to do to secure us now and for the future. That feeling of limitation and constraint around the lack of financial resources. And not having a partner who I'm like, babe, we're going through this together. And to have my partner be like, babe, I got you. And for me to be like, I got you too. Like, we are in this. And to be woven into our community in that way. And I guess I'm just grieving that humanity's been fractionated and that we don't live village settings anymore. We don't live in that close physical proximity where we are a collective and we pick up, the odds and ends slack for each other, and everybody has their strength and their power and their gift, and they're intricately woven in, integral part of the whole of community. It's a scary, isolating feeling to be like, I rent this apartment in the city, and if I don't, then we have nowhere to go, right? We don't have a home. And just to think that we are in these times where if we aren't, how do I choose my words? Obedient and complying to what we are being coerced into doing, there are very real ramifications for us. And I've had this thought recently, like, it feels like society's breaking up with me. Feels like the system is breaking up with me. And then I got pissed off because I'm like, wait a second. This is an abusive relationship. This system, which is built upon oppression and manipulation and coercion and control and debt slave type system, it's an abusive relationship. It doesn't have our best interests as humans in mind. So if anything, I should be breaking up with it. And it really messed with my head to think, and you're breaking up with me? But if I don't do certain things, that we're done? Or even beyond that I'll be punished. There's a grief in that we are living in these times. There's a grief like, wow, life feels really hard right now. For so many of us, there's a grief in the polarization of humanity that, depending on where you stand on a certain procedure, can mean you lose friends, you lose your livelihood, your job, you lose your community, you lose your voice on social media, you might lose your bank account, you might lose your property, you can be disowned by society, punished, imprisoned, fined. So this death and rebirth portal, I feel in my personal, shifting from mother to crone, the dying away of the motherhood, the aspect of my motherhood identity that was all focused on my kids. It's like, who am I now? And in such uncertain times in the world, it's like, who am I now? And I do feel called. I know what my work is here in this next leg of the journey, where I'm still stewarding my children, but in a totally different way. The nature of our relationship is changing, right? They're shifting into adulthood as they should be and individuating in their ways. And now I'm feeling into this whole, like, who am I? Who am I as a crone? Who am I as this middle-aged single woman who has a calling, has a passion, feels convicted about what I want to do in the world, and what now legacy am I creating? What gifts am I giving now to the world? How can I soften more into my feminine, which is the realm of the crone? She softens into her feminine, right? The mother phase of life is mostly the most masculine aspect, the action, doing, and it's like, oh, I'm arcing into crone. It's a softening, it's a surrendering. So I'm like still needing to really birth through my work and in my calling in that way, while softening more into my feminine finally. There's the crone invites us into surrender and letting go. She's deeply faithful. She fully trusts when she's in her empowered nature, right? The empowered crone is the one who knows, having lived a full life. She knows in an embodied way. She doesn't have to go around and announce it to everybody and post it on social media. She's like, I just know. She walks it, right? The empowered crone. And I really do feel called for us as humanity to bring back our elders into their proper state of eldership. I would like to be a part of helping that to happen by honoring our elders and looking to them and listening to them. They are wise. They have lived long lives. If we could humble ourselves to really heed them. And of course, not all people who are further along in age are necessarily elder status, right? A lot of people have succumbed to the pains of life and gotten very, very lost along the way. But there still is an inherent wisdom in having lived a long life. There is still a wisdom in just being like, I've been on the planet for a long time, right? Our elders. So calling back the honoring of these phases of life, honoring the rites of passage, of the arc of our lives, and shifting our relationship to death. I think we want to hide away our elders because it's confronting to see the aging process. It doesn't look freaking fun in a lot of ways when we see the very real reality of what aging can do to our bodies and what so many of our elders are navigating. And it's like, so often they're just tucked away into homes because our society's not set up to honor that process or deal with it. We've been fractionated. We're all broken up all over the place. We all live in our individual all over the world. And it's like, these are the symptoms of living within structures and systems that are not designed for us to thrive. And we hide away death, right? We celebrate birth, we avoid death at all costs. We avoid confronting death. We avoid confronting aging. So, yeah, I guess I'm just coming to terms with this Crone. And what I realize is I really need to ritualize it. I've been feeling that I need to create a ceremony for myself to honor this shift and this rite of passage into Crone. And to birth my own self and initiate my own self as a Crone. And to really feel in very deeply to how may I be of service to myself? How may I be of service to my family, my friends, my community, and the earth, my lineage, my spirit that came here on purpose. My spirit has a mission here. I've devoted my human life to fulfill my soul's highest expression here. I am a willing conduit. My human self is yoked to my spirit forevermore. It's a decision I made during Cancer. I just said, I devote this human self to that ineffable, the infinite life force that animates me. Maybe we think of it individuated as a soul, but it's really one with source, God, creation. We are each here on purpose. We each have a sacred purpose. I think now is the time, more than ever on earth, that we feel into that. And if we don't know what it is, we get real prayerful and real quiet and we tune in, whether we call it prayer, meditation, just contemplation, questioning, that we can get real quiet and feel in and just say, why am I here? And how can I make the most of my time in this body? This body, as it makes its passage through time. I mean, this is our all-terrain vehicle for life on earth, our devoted companion, conjured by our spirit. How can we get in right relationship with our bodies and with ourselves and with our lives, so that when we do pass on from here, in those final days within the body, we're like, I'm good. It's not like, oh my God, I'm about to die. Like, some people have a little bit of time before they leave their body. And then it's like doing a whole lifetime of wrapping it up. Then do ourselves a favor and do some life reviewing now. And really get clear, like, where have I been? Where am I at? Where do I want to go? What else do I need to do here on this earth before I leave? So that, when we're in that final rite of passage, the transition from the human body temple, the surrendering of the body back to earth, that we're like, it's been a good life. And even if that passage comes like a shock, we weren't prepared for it at all. It was just this moment, something happened to us and we leave our bodies, an accident, whatever it might be. That there is, as much as possible, we've lived lives with the intention to really fulfill our highest destiny and be right within, and be right with all of creation, and be right with heaven and earth. And here we are in winter season, right? Winter solstice will happen in a few weeks. And we are deepening our descent into winter. And this is the time of the unseen realms. I think of fall as the time of Crone. Winter is the time of the unseen realms, right? And then spring, it's like maiden, summer, mother, Crone, fall, winter, unseen realms. It goes on, it cycles, it spirals. And here in the unseen realms, it's time for contemplation, right? It's a good time to contemplate. It's a good time to life review. And on winter solstice, we deepen into the darkness. The days, are short. The nights are longer. We're in that contracted period of introspection and hibernation. And winter solstice is the moment where the light begins to return. And from that point forward, the days get incrementally longer. We get more daylight. So it's a perfect time for us to drop into life review and perhaps maybe have a grief ritual. Just honoring winter solstice, honoring contraction and expansion, the ebbing and flowing of life, ritualizing whatever might need to be ritualized in your life, whether it's happening right now or whether it happened in the past and you feel like, this happened 10 years ago, but I don't feel complete with it, or like I didn't get to honor it the way I think it needs to be honored. We can do that. We can do it on our own. You can do it in the bathtub. You can do it right where you're at and breathe and just honor its sincerity. You can do it at the beach. You can call in your peoples. No matter, it's like we have the ability to do this right here, right now, in our own unique way. Just all we need is sincere heart. So thank you for listening. The Crone Chronicles continue on. Again, if you want to dive more deeply into the art of awakening with me, to these Crone Chronicles, I get way more private and personal in my Patreon. I welcome you over there. And we move through the seasons together. We move through the seasons of the year. We move through the seasons of life. We dance. We do a lot of dancing. We connect. So, yeah. Bless you. Thank you for dropping in with me today. To be continued. Peace be within you. And thanks for just riding with me on this journey. I bless you. And